The maritime industry is the engine room of the global economy. 90% of all goods are moved by sea, and they touch every corner of the world, every culture of the world, every industry of the world. No industry exists but for shipping. And that means we have huge potential to be pioneers in every field, basically because we do the hardest things and have the hardest conversations, and we do it in a culturally cohesive manner.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast lovers, and welcome to episode 245. Listening to this episode, you're in for a treat. Alison Cusack, a principal lawyer at her law firm, Cusack & Company, in Melbourne, Australia, touches every aspect of the maritime industry. We recorded a while ago, so I'm convinced that Ali has picked up a few more awards, as that is what she usually does. Alison is a well-renowned maritime shipping lawyer. When I decided to use the hashtag #EveryConversationMatters and incorporate that in the little jingle that you hear, this is what I meant. Listen to this conversation and then tell me what it made you do. Fasten your seatbelts. This is Alison Cusack for you.
Every conversation matters.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Alison Cusack, and I am the founder and principal lawyer of maritime law firm Cusack & Co., based in Melbourne, Australia.
And what is your background?
My background is a failed engineering student turned tax office graduate rescued by big liner shipping into the in-house world of legal in-house, and then now running my own firm. So a little bit of a odd path to where I am now.
But how did it start for you in the maritime industry? I mean, what happened there? How did you find us?
Well, it's actually very funny, and I only really put it together a couple of years ago how fortuitous it was. So in law school, you can do all these fake law courts. They're called moots. And you do the competitions and you stand on your feet and you present the plaintiff side or the defendant side, and you have this problem. And I love public speaking, so I was like, oh, this is great fun. And there's this very prestigious international moot called the Viz Moot, and it's in Vienna, and it's the sale of international goods, and it's the premier mooting competition. And I missed out on that. I was very devastated because chance to go to Vienna. And one of the lecturers said, hey, if you'd like to give up your entire summer holidays and self-teach yourself maritime law, we'll take a team to Brisbane, where they have the International Maritime Arbitration Law Moot. And it's an international competition as well. It just so happened to be in Brisbane that year, so it's just a very short sort of 2-hour flight. And of course I said, I would love nothing more than to give up my entire summer holidays and self-teach an area of law that I don't care. I don't know what it is. That's fine. Never heard of it. I'll learn it. Anything to be able to do more mooting. A little bit of we call it a moot junkie. And so I'm doing it, and you sort of split it into two parts. You the procedural part where it's like, can we even have this arbitration? And then you have the substantive part, which is about the actual shipping law. And the funniest part about all of this is I was on the procedural part. I didn't really do much of the substantive, but I was helping my teammate. And I had a little tiny bit of substantive law that they could carve out for me, and it was general average. The only substantive part was the most niche, nerdy part of shipping law. And because it was the only substantive part I had, and the other part for those playing at home was safe ports. So I have heard all the arguments for safe ports in all of my training sessions. And so I had general average, and I dove into it so deep that I learnt far more than I realized anyone knew about it for the judging. And I was there going, no, I have to do this first. There's 4 elements. I have to prove that I have the 4 elements before we can even say there's a general average, before we can defend it. Like there's rules to this. And then we'd get into the sessions and they go, oh no, we're just assuming general average is declared. And I'm like, but I haven't proven it. You can't just declare. And so that's how I got into it. And because I had started off doing my university degree as electrical engineering, everything's to the nano, everything is invisible, everything is small. And then you go to shipping and everything is ginormous. And you're like, oh, a ship crashes into a wharf and a collision, container spillover. You can physically see the damage. This is amazing. Like, I love this. It was so absurdly big from coming from so absurdly small that I just adored it. It wasn't this, tiny, like, how can we even see if there's any problems with it? And so that's how I found out about shipping. And then I had to do my dissertation for honors for law school. And they said, okay, pick something you've already done a lot of research on. I was like, oh, general average. I will look at the NYPE 93 time charter that's got the, York-Antwerp rules, 1974, amended 1990, or any subsequent amendments, there too, or thereof. And I was like, oh, well, the 2004 is so different from the 1994. And can the parties have had contractual agreement considering the whole issue around salvage and owners? And so I did a multi-thousand-word essay on whether the 2004 was a replacement or an amendment for the purposes of the NYP 93 time charter, which I don't think you could get any more.
It's so nerdy. I'm sorry, but it is.
Because the whole point was, if it was uncertain, would you have to strike it out, and then you wouldn't have general average at all? And as all of us know in the shipping world, that you have to incorporate it via contract. So if you don't have it in contract, you don't have. What are you doing? Common law principles of general average? Are you insane? So because I know to this day I can't go back and read it, because obviously my writing was like very early days. And I just don't want to read how like clunky and juvenile it was. I should read it sometime though. But yeah, so I went off and I asked all these people in the profession in Australia, and they're like, what? General average? No. But can I read it when you're done? And I was like, okay. And so I basically met most of the industry whilst I was at university. And then they contacted me with other people in like London. And then that's how I found out that, like Germany, like the German Maritime Code has codified it. But then you find out that there's no such thing as like the German Maritime Code. It's a collective noun for all the various different bits and pieces of like shipping legislation. And you're like, oh, well, this is a fun thing to uncover. And my poor university law librarians, who are the best in the world, honestly, they were sending off for these obscure articles and textbooks and other universities around the world to photocopy them and email them back. And then they bought the York-Antwerp rules, the Lowndes and Rodolph version, the print-on-demand version. They bought that for the law library just for me. And to this day, it is purely my morals and ethics stopping me from just permanently borrowing it, because no one's going to need it. So I don't think you could start off any more niche in the shipping industry and then climb your way out. I like the minutiae. I like to really get right. But I was vindicated because I was doing a legal review of a time charter party. And they said, oh, well, does it really matter? What's even the difference? And I went, I can tell you in 6,000 words, I have it pre-prepared. So yes, I also went to CMI 2 years ago in Antwerp. And I might have attended one of the working groups. And they all went, okay, you're the general average nerd. Oh, you're the general average nerd from Australia. And I was like, yes. What an international reputation to have.
So can I ask you, what is the general average?
Oh, I gotta say, general average is the most equitable legal principle I think I've ever come across. And so, as we've all been following the Dali and the Baltimore Bridge, essentially, general average, it's from Rhodesian times. And it really came about more in your your pre-containerization world, more when you just had like sacks of miscellaneous stuff, right? And the whole point of general average is that say your ship got stranded and you needed to lighten the load so that you could float off on the incoming high tide and then continue on your salvage or save your maritime voyage. So in order to make sure that you just did what was necessary, right? And you said, right, well, these are the sacks of cargo I need to throw overboard. And because everyone benefited, they said, well, basically everyone should chip in and we'll work out what the cost of the loss is attributable to saving the maritime adventure. And then everyone who's benefited will chip in. And that's a very basic premise. There's a whole different set of rules around the York Antwerp rules, which set out what type of costs are allowable. So it's all very formulaic and it's all the average adjusters have put a lot of work into making it very straightforward, even though there's court cases and court cases and court cases about it. But basically it's very premise. It's saying if one person has to sacrifice, they shouldn't suffer the loss. Everyone should chip in and make sure that they have suffered proportionately to what we have as thanks for saving the maritime adventure. And so when you've got your 10,000 TEU or your 20,000 TEU ships, suddenly that's 20,000 cargo owners. And then you've got the fuel, you've got the bunkers, you've got the actual containers themselves because they're owned by someone else. You've got the ship itself. So suddenly you go, oh goodness, it's a very, very expensive Excel spreadsheet that someone's putting together. And a lot of documentation. Because you've got to get the bills of lading and then you've got to get the invoices and then you've got to get the insurance and then you have to get the insurers have to provide a bond to say, we'll chip in so that you can release our cargo. So 20,000 containers worth of paperwork. To me, like that's just fun for me, right? Like obviously not if there's someone injured, but that's just a fun, super fun puzzle to deal with.
I can understand that. So once you became the Australian expert of general average, what happened then?
Well, then the global financial crisis hit and I couldn't get a law job to save myself. And the tax office was hiring, the federal government was hiring. And I thought, sure, my banking and finance degree will really come in handy. And it didn't hurt that my dad was an accountant. And he's like, go to the government. They'll pay you well. They'll train you well. And that they did. And so I did that for 18 months. And then the General Counsel of A&L, which is part of the CMA CGM group, was like, hey, are you still interested in maritime law? And I was like, am I? And I was like, play it cool. No, there was no playing it cool. And I was like, yes, I'm very much interested. Yes, I will come in for an interview. I'll do whatever it takes. And then he's like, when can you start? And I was like, tomorrow. I don't know. Like, it's like, maybe sort it out with your current employer. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going to dip. So I finished up on the 30th of June, which is our end of financial year. I was all very, very tidy, hilariously. And then on the 5th of July, I started in the shipping industry. And I get to tell everyone that I was headhunted for my I was headhunted for my first legal job. And then I created my second legal job. So I'm doing well.
And how long did you stay there?
Just shy of 6 years.
Okay. And that is when you started your own company.
Yes. So I always knew that there was no sort of climbing the ladder because there was two of us and he was the boss and he was really good at his job and he was really happy there. And he was always very clear about that. He said, listen, the only way up is out. And I tried the London job market and I did interview with two firms and I met one of the law partners of that London law firm at the CMI conference. And we were like, you look familiar. You also look familiar. And we were waiting for the lift with a bunch of people. And I went, oh, you didn't give me a job. And she was like, oh my God. It was very, very funny. And I was like, no, it's all right. I want to start my own firm. It all ended well. But yeah, so I tried to get a job and I hadn't worked in private practice. So they didn't want to hire me in the local market. I was like, how can it be to run your own law firm? Actually, it can't be that hard. It took like 3 bits of paper to fill out. And I was like, you guys, I'm very concerned about how easy this is actually. And then I just set up my law firm. It took like 2 days. And then I went to the global shippers forum a week later. I knew it was coming. It was going to be in Melbourne. It was an international conference. And I thought, all right, I need, like, I want to be in the room with all these people. It's all like target rich environment for clients. And that's when they first started coming out with the lanyards. This was May 2018. So when they came out with the big, huge lanyards for conferences, so you could tuck with your little pouches. And everyone said, oh, what are you doing? I said, oh, I just set up my law firm last week. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, I just set up my own law firm last week. It's really cool. And they're like, you are far too casual about that. I was like, but it's not like it's hard. You just go and do it. Like, I'm a lawyer. It's not that hard to like set up a company and set up a law firm and filling out forms is kind of my jam. So yeah. And then everyone was really horrendously confused about how like laid back I was about.
But how is it going?
It's super interesting. I've just ticked over 6 years, so I'm into my 7th year. And I wonder if I'm in like a 6-year cycle phase, like every 6 years I have to do something new. So I am taking a little bit of time to reflect on what's the next mountain to conquer, or what do I want to do differently, or do I want to shake it all up again? So far, I mean, I'm winning awards. I'm got my super cool newsletter, The Shipping Lawyer, which, just clicked over 2,000 subscribers in 3 months. So that's really cool. Maybe starting a podcast to be my true, authentic nerd self. But yeah, it's sort of that moment of, okay, well, you've climbed that mountain. Do you want to keep going? Do you want to do something different? So yeah, I think it's sort of, it always reminds me of that sort of quote where, when they talk about teachers and they say, have you been teaching for 25 years? Or have you done 25 years of teaching the same thing? I'm butchering that quite horribly, but do you know what I mean? Like, am I gaining experience, or am I just kind of doing the same thing? And am I growing? Am I learning? Am I pushing myself? Do I have to push myself? So yeah, it's kind of this 6-year cycle, I think, that really sort of goes, let's just stop and reflect and see what next, and be a bit more intentional about things now that all the huge craziness, of the pandemic, because Melbourne copped the lockdowns pretty hard, just recovering from that. That's where I'm at really at the moment, just a moment of, reflection and where to put the energies next, I guess.
You should have been in Gothenburg last week, because we had the CMI conference here.
I know, and I do know a couple of the Swedish lawyer ladies, and they are phenomenal, and they kind of adopted me when I was in Antwerp, and we hung out and had a few champagnes together. So I was very excited to see them succeed, and also on the 100-year anniversary of the Hague Rules. I mean, what more do you want at a conference than to be on the 100-year anniversary of a cargo convention? Like, I would have had a session going, right, everyone name their favorite clause. Like, everyone name your favorite provision. Let's go. Let's have fun. I know it's so far away though.
I know. You could have come and visited Visby, maybe. That would have made it for you.
Well, I was in Antwerp, right? So if I was going to go anywhere, it was going to be the York Antwerp. So I think I did well. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Sweden would be, in shipping parlance, I think there'd be 2 transshipments to get all the way up to Sweden.
Yeah, but I was happy because all of a sudden all these Vista ladies from all over the world turned up on my doorstep, and I had a great time meeting with them. I didn't participate in the CMI, but I got the best out of it. I get to meet the ladies.
I can absolutely imagine. And I know it's going to Japan next year, which is a little bit closer to home. And then I found out that the marine pilots are coming to Brisbane in 2032. It's a short 8 years away. I was like, great. I'll go hang out with the international pilots. It'll be good fun. So, it's when I was 2022, it was the CMI conference and then the WISTA conference, and they were a week apart, like literally back to back in Antwerp and Geneva. And I thought, this is never, ever going to happen again in my professional lifetime. I'm going to seize the opportunity and go to Europe. And I met 600-700 people in the span of a fortnight. And the funniest part is I'd met someone at Antwerp and then met him a week later in Geneva. I'm like, oh, look at us, just hanging out in 2 different countries.
Maybe we should say a little bit about the CMI for my listener who doesn't know what that is.
Oh, my pronunciation is terrible. It's
in French.
Yeah, it's Comité Maritime International. I'm going to get so many comments on that. I'm sorry. The Australian language tends to butcher a lot of foreign languages, unfortunately, with our accent. So yeah, it's all the maritime law associations from around the world get together and nerd out on things like Lex Maritima and what the current percentage rate for general average is for whichever set of rules and what they're doing next with their, so they've got consultative status with the IMO. And so weighing in on all the different conventions and what's happening and what they're drafting and what they're looking after. So when I went in 2022, I just scraped in for the young CMI essay competition, and I wrote 6,000 words on, of course, general average and how it would work in autonomous shipping setting. It was great. I think I invented the concept of sea embassies because I wanted to talk about autonomous shipping, and I wanted to talk about general average, and I wanted to talk about the Longchamp case, which had happened in the High Court in London. Basically, the average adjuster said, this is included in the money. And the shipper said, absolutely not. We're going to fight about it for 10 years. And it was only over $180,000. And in the end, the answer was, well, the adjuster's right. So I think that was a huge win for the adjusters. But so to get to that point in 6,000 words to talk about general average and autonomous shipping environment, I was like, how can I really power through the obvious obstacle of properly manned ships and 200 years of legal precedent? And I was like, I'll just come up with sea embassies. So basically I was like, well, if you can come up with, an embassy, one of the Swedish embassy in Australia, and that's Swedish sovereign soil, I was like, well, can't you just designate a building as being technically at sea, and you still have trained mariners, but when they're in that building, they're technically at sea for the purposes of legal concerns. And then it just preserved, because you want to preserve precedent. You want to preserve it as much as possible. And I was like, oh, this is the easiest way. If you're remotely operating the ship, you have to do it, quote unquote, at sea. On land, sea embassy, boom, legal fiction, get your heart out.
Smart, very smart. Too smart, probably.
I showed this essay to some people and they're like, okay, but the sea embassy thing's really interesting. And I was like, oh, that was just to get to my final point. And they're like, listen, mate, the general average, only you care about, with love, only you care about. So yeah, if anyone wants to talk about my whole legal concept about sea embassies so that they can win the autonomous shipping war from land, hit me up. My consulting fees are outrageous, but I'm worth it. But yeah, sea embassies. I just thought it was a really cool, simple, you got to be, if you're practicing law right and you're negotiating contracts, which is what I'm really, really noodly, phenomenally good at, you have to be surgically precise. You want to attack contracts with keyhole surgery precision, not just slicing open the abdomen and just ferreting around in there and going, I don't know, something around this. So if you can be, the visual imagery is great on this podcast.
Yeah.
But if you can be surgically precise, right, and make the smallest amount of changes for the maximum amount of impact, then you're elegant, right? You're elegant in your legal drafting. So I really wanted to talk about this concept. And the biggest issue was, how do you preserve? And no one else had really come up with a solution, because that's the biggest obstacle from a legal perspective, right? Is, well, how do you not screw over all these conventions and all these laws? And I was like, oh, sea embassies with legal fiction. Make it work, make it happen, that's fine. And it was really fun to discuss. And if anyone wants my essay on sea embassies, aka general average undercover, just contact me. I will happily give it to you because it's fun. I also talk about penguins.
Penguins?
It's a risk modeling profile I was talking about how penguins keep warm in Arctic winter. It's a thing. That's okay. My essay talks about it. I'll give it to you later. It's a fun read. But it goes into the whole thing about the mentality of the industry and how we should cater to the mentality of the industry. And the other thing that I was talking about was something that I think I coined, but if it's somewhere else, then I'll happily give credit. The Titanic fallacy. And I coined that as a mentality of the industry of, well, if we say it enough, it must be true. She's unsinkable. We don't need enough lifeboats because she's unsinkable. So we're just going to lean in so hard to the fact that she's unsinkable that we just won't do anything else because we've just decided that is true. And then the other issue is, I was talking about apportionment of risk and apportionment of liability. And they're like, well, if you had $100 million loss and you had 10 carriers involved, then just apportion it equally. And I was like, well, I think we can all know from the Longchamp case that people will spend 10 years litigating all the way to the High Court of London about $180,000. So we know that the shipping industry just loses their mind a wee bit when it comes to just like sane commercial decisions, because the ego is so phenomenally interesting to witness in the shipping industry. And I think we all remember a little website that was all about the largest container ship that was to ever be built. And there was a whole website dedicated to that. And then it was surpassed.
I find it it's interesting to talk to you because, I mean, I'm a little bit of a tech nerd. I don't know much about it, but I'm interested and I'm curious. So I talk to people about the new stuff happening in our industry. And I've done a few. I mean, when I started this podcast sort of 9 years ago, I asked everyone, what do you think about autonomous shipping? And everyone got that question. And the elderly generation, or people older than I am, said it will never happen. It will never happen, sort of. And the younger generation said, when will it come? When can we do this? It's so interesting. And then after a while, it became, everyone talked about it, so I didn't want to talk about it anymore. But now I think, I mean, they're stuck in law, aren't they? They're stuck in how do we do this that way? Because technically it's possible.
Well, so I have a lot of different thoughts on autonomous shipping from different viewpoints. One, sea embassies. I think that's the answer for the legal position. And I do go, like, I have a whole thought process on how you actually make it all properly work and blah, blah, blah. And I honestly think that any quote unquote developing nation who wants to get a leapfrog, if they did it right, they could really be first to market and then kind of box everyone out. And I just think that's cool. When it comes to autonomous shipping, though, I have a really good friendship with a lot of marine pilots, and I have a lot of chats to them about the hazards they face. I mean, the issue of the ladders is horrendous, psychological safety. And in talking to them, I really find out, what they think of it because they're face to face. It's easy for me. I'm not getting up on a physical ladder. I went out in a pilot boat a couple of months ago, and let me tell you, I was stressed at the thought of climbing the ladder when there was no, I was not climbing it, but just being that close to it, I was like, okay. But also, so of course, if it's autonomous, people think, oh, we'll just do it. But for me, having worked inside a carrier, and I think this is where a lot of people don't probably realize this about me, is that I worked inside an ocean carrier on the same floor as the vessel planners. On all those vessel planners, majority are ex-seafarers, or they're master mariners. So I spent a lot of time talking to seafarers, or people who had been seafarers, people who had been masters. And the thing that also happens inside a carrier that you just don't see about or you don't hear about is when you get pulled into a SOLAS situation where you have to basically pull up, stop, and wait because you're one of the closest vessels to respond to an emergency. So when you've seen 6 years worth of how often you are called to render assistance or potentially render assistance to any type of yachtsman, just any type of shipping disaster, you suddenly realize actually how necessary it is that there are people who could come to your aid. And autonomous shipping, you can't provide aid. And then the other thing is, when you work inside a carrier, you also start learning about cyber risks. And then more and more, we're looking at cyber attacks. And in Australia, we had sort of maybe, I didn't get all the details. Of course, I'm not going to release all the details, but, ransomware and cyber attacks. And you realize that really you're one, and I think we all know about the fish tank story, about how that had this really secure site and had the thermometer on the fish tank, and they hacked the whole system through there. You kind of realize how much vulnerability you're putting in, not only for weaponizing a ship in an autonomous setting, but also how many times do we have technology fail on us, or redundancy is not built in the way we want to. And being in a country that is super strict on biosecurity, on, waterway safety, cleanliness, we've got the Great Barrier Reef, you're always in the back of your mind going, yeah, we're not going to be the ship that pollutes the Great Barrier Reef. We're not going to have a huge oil spill. Our next door neighbours in New Zealand, the Renner, that was a huge environmental impact. So, when you look at all those things, I think there is limited application where it would be good, but I don't see doing it for doing its sake is necessarily smart. I think that there's uses, and this is where I think there's also a breakdown in realizing what it is the skill set that seafarers have. Because if we were better, and I did a whole thing for APEXN, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Seafarers Excellence Network, I did a whole presentation to them about the life cycle of seafarer mentoring. And we really fail them by not bringing them to shore and not bringing that knowledge into ocean carriers, into freight forwarders, into huge exporters, into the ports, into government, and get their first-hand knowledge and their experience, because I thought that everyone had the same access to information and knowledge and awareness about seafarers that I did when I started. And then I left and I realized how disconnected everyone is, and the way that that increases safety risks by magnitude, because you have people who have been on a ship and people who have never, who just have this disconnect. And I think that if we did better by our seafarers now, when they want to come to shore at whatever part of the life cycle, and shout out to the chief engineers who don't get the cool gigs because they're not a master mariner. So shout out to the chief engineers who get overlooked. If we were better as an industry of bringing that information on shore and continuing the life cycle of education and reaping the benefits of that, instead of just being like, okay, bye. Oh, you don't know how to write an email. Okay, bye. Oh, you write in all caps. Okay, bye. I think then we would have such a different conversation about autonomous vessels. But because we don't capture that experience now for the betterment of the industry, we don't think we're going to lose anything. But it's only because we're not capitalizing on the investment that there is, investment by other people, that we as an industry, I really think we've got this leakage of talent and information and experience to really bring in and add to those conversations. Because from literal experience, when they're like, oh, just send the ship out, I'm like, no, there's really huge waves. And then the master mariner would come in and go, you're not sending that ship out, end of discussion. And it would kill the conversation dead in the best possible way, because he would look at everyone in the eye and go, absolutely not. I was a master. I'm not doing that to any crew. And that's what we're missing in so many of these conversations, where it gets so far down the line that you finally talk to someone who's had that experience who goes, well, that's just not going to work. But everyone's so committed and invested that once again, the ego kicks in.
I agree with you, but you are now presuming that autonomous shipping is without crew. And that's a different story, I think.
That is true. And then I think, who was it put it out? There's the four kind of defined levels of autonomous, what we define as autonomous. But then again, we still need to have those lower echelons to bring in at that level. You can't just come in and there's a hierarchy and a learning for a reason. And we're already really low on crew. Like, you speak to anyone, and we used to have so much more crew, and we've really brought it back to the bare bones. So what's the future pipeline? I can see autonomous shipping's being the answer for lack of crew, right? We're already facing a shortage, and there was a projected shortage by 2030, 2050, even before COVID hit. But is that the answer instead of culture and appreciation for seafarers?
No, but I don't see, I see autonomous ships as a safety thing. I mean, you might need assistance to help see everything. There's so many things you are in charge of when you're a master mariner, or when you are the crew on board the ship, when you are on watch. There's so many things to take into consideration. So maybe it's helpful to have this technical solution to assist you in your work.
Kind of like autopilot with like airplanes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's only people who are championing autonomous shipping, is to get everyone very clear on their messaging, because I think at the moment, a lot of people sort of go, okay, autonomous shipping, it's all or nothing. But I think it's those who are really trying to push autonomous shipping have to bring everyone else with them to say, all right, there are 4 levels and we really want to tackle 1 and 2. And maybe in the really dangerous parts of the world, we try and put it up to, 3 or 4, or we have the ability, say, for when you're going around dangerous waters, whether it's literally like physically dangerous or, piracy risk or war risk or whatever, but we need to get things in and out. Maybe you say, all right, it operates at a level 1 or at a level 2, but in those designated areas, we put it up to a level 3. You know, I think a lot of companies would say if we could get our ships through the Red Sea without crew on board and put them back on at the Suez Canal, then I think a lot of people would be really happy and just fly them over. But I think that's on autonomous shipping, like those who are championing it, to really get messaging a lot clearer, because everything I see on autonomous shipping really homogenizes it. Instead of those 4 levels is really that all or nothing kind of conversation. And I think that's really off-putting to a lot of people who sort of see the value.
I think maybe the people who are working on it are more technical than marketing minded. But they will come there. I think so.
You have to have the sell. You have to have the pitch. You have to get it down to the elevator pitch so everyone can. You want everyone else in the industry to be parroting what you're selling, so then they're doing all the hard work for you, not only within the industry, but outside of the industry. You know, you want people to bring the VC investors in from all walks. Do you know what I mean? I think, you know, look at all the wind farms. You want that wind farm money brought into autonomous shipping.
Can I get the elevator pitch on shipping, the maritime industry?
Yes. The maritime industry is the engine room of the global economy. 90% of all goods are moved by sea, and they touch every corner of the world, every culture of the world, every industry of the world. No industry exists but for shipping. And that means we have huge potential to be pioneers in every field, basically because we do the hardest things and have the hardest conversations, and we do it in a culturally cohesive manner.
And how do we bring that outside our own bubble? I mean, how do we bring the maritime industry to the general public? What is your suggestions?
Well, I mean, the carriers have got that sweet, sweet pandemic cash that we all know about. And I think they need to go on a little bit of a marketing campaign and put some of the cash so that we can have that visibility. So the smaller players, aka me, can piggyback off of that. Being invisible is not a superpower. It's a hindrance. And we need to put that sweet, sweet cash into both. You know, shipping suffers from the tragedy of the commons, right? It affects everyone, therefore it affects no one. So no one's individually going to champion it. I think we need to put cash into both sides of all the political parties to say it is apolitical, it is bipartisan. You know, every one of any political party goes to the same supermarket and buys food from the same grocery store, or buys their appliances from the same providers. And we need to show off our strengths and show off our skill set and say, hey, did you know that if there was a ship in distress, we could cut it in half and then put it on 2 other ships and then sail it halfway around the world and then put it back together? We got some mad skills. We should be celebrating and flaunting that, because why are we losing the best skill sets to tech and mining and construction and defense, when we could be the number one industry that everyone thinks is cool as heck and is doing all these really interesting things? Why are those cashed up giants not seizing the opportunity to say, the world kept turning. When everyone stopped, the world kept turning because of us. You're welcome. We would like to be in the spotlight now.
But I meet people and I interview people who has as their task in their job to actually spread the word about the maritime industry. I have been interviewing I think 240 people. And let's say 5 of them had a good idea of how we can reach the young people outside our industry. How can we get them into here?
I'm on TikTok and everyone's like, oh my God, I'm on the nichest part of the I'm on Ship Talk. And I'm like, welcome to Ship Talk, right? I am here. A lot of people do know, I mean, a lot of the law industry in Melbourne and Australia, they don't know a lot about shipping, but they all go, Alison is the answer. If you have a shipping question, go to Alison. So I think I'm batting above my average in terms of visibility, mainly because I love it so much. Every single person I speak to is like, oh, I fell into shipping. I was like, that is not a sustainable recruitment process for an industry. That is insane. Where are the billboards? We have literal containers. Put some vanity containers on some trucks and drive them around, and then have a competition and pay a radio station to have a competition and be like, did you spot the truck? Did you spot the container? Was there a 5-letter digit code on the side of the container? Ring in, tell us where you were, win a prize. Like, where is the photo competitions for the best? You know, we have the most visually, aesthetically pleasing industry. We also have the coolest industry for footage. If you see the tugs go out, why are we not marketing? If you wanted good talent as a carrier, right? And I'm using the carriers because I know they're cashed up. Everyone's seen their quarterly reportings. Why wouldn't you be the only one they know? Where is the ego? You want to be number one. You want to be number one in liftings in a port. You want to be number one in tonnage. You want to be the number one carrier, and you fight for, like, build the biggest ships. Why are you not going out and branding and saying, I want the top talent from every university? Why aren't you sponsoring, university courses to do things? Why aren't you sponsoring apprenticeships? Why aren't you going to all of the local schools and saying, I want someone from every single school, because one person from every single senior school is going to either be in the trades, in the office, on the ship, doing whatever. Why don't you have a whole marketing dangle cash in front of people, cash prizes? There is a cost of living crisis around the entire world. Dangle cash prizes in front of people and then follow through, and then you'll have shipping. Like, that is my answer. So if the big carriers, Maersk, MSC, hit me up. I'll do a marketing campaign. It'll be great.
Why don't you become number one when it comes to equality onto that list? I
was the national president for 4 years. I have possibly ranted at every single senior male in the Australian shipping industry in government and commercial and defence. I'm pretty sure that.
So you were the national president of Vista in Australia. Maybe we should just add that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes. In Australia for 4 years. I have had so many conversations around gender equality. I don't understand how we can be really good comparatively at culture and being really good at diversity in terms of culture and, being appreciative of the different cultural styles that people bring, and then suddenly going, oh, but gender, that's so hard. I'm like, oh, gender, well, that's just blown my mind. Everyone said, what should the carriers do with their cash? And I was like, recruit more women seafarers to literally be on your ships so that you have a service to sell. You literally do not have an ocean carrier company without seafarers. You should have thrown cash at having an all-women crew, right? You should have poached left, right, and center and started having all-women ships. You should have closed the gender pay gap. You had all this spare cash. Close the gender pay gap. I'm sorry. What are your NDAs teaching you? What are your Lean Six Sigma courses teaching you? Oh, we have an initiative. It requires cash. We have so much cash. Okay, let's dig out all the initiatives that have been thrown up by the volunteer labor of your gender and diversity committee who have done the extra work on top of their current job for free in a volunteer capacity to give you the answers that you don't take up. I don't understand how we're so bad at gender. It is a literal choice. It is a literal, deliberate choice. And do you know what? I'm going to be really bold. We might edit this out later if I lose my nerve. You can't be this bad at gender as a leader and then talk about merit, because guess what? Equal pay and treating people with respect and having proper workplaces where people don't get physically assaulted or sexually harassed is a literal workplace right in many, many countries. If you have no idea how to do that, you do not deserve to be the CEO, which means you didn't get it on merit because you don't have the right skill set. So stop talking about merit if you're going to be so woefully incompetent at gender equity. Because if you are no good at gender equity and you say you got your job on merit, I know you're full of lies. So you should either get better or step aside if you want to maintain the fallacy and the BS of merit.
I think I love you, Ali. So well put.
That is my answer. And can I tell you, people might go, no, Alison, would you ever say that to anyone's face? There is more than one Navy commander and Commodore and Rear Admiral who's a little bit afraid of me. But no one has ever said that I'm wrong. No one has ever said that. No one's ever had an answer. Everyone goes, my God, I think we need to. I didn't like hearing that. I've had a pilot, marine pilot, say, I didn't like hearing it, but I needed to hear it, and I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, because which parent would recommend your children to enter into an industry where there is not equality?
And this is why you don't have to work on one thing at one time. You can promote the industry. And I always talk about this. And I say luck, I think it was a little bit of luck and timing. The IMO Secretary General in 2019 came to Australia, and I got to be one of the keynote speakers. And it was in the year of empowering women in the maritime community. It was a great theme. I loved it. It was so helpful to shut down misogynists who's like, oh, we have to do with everything. I was like, if the IMO thinks it's a big enough deal to make it a theme of the year, then I'm going to take my cues from the IMO, just by the by. But I got to do a keynote, and that was so freaking cool. Shout out Cusack. Cool dude. Had a great chat with him. And the title of my speech was Fearless Pursuit of Imperfect Progress. Just be that little bit better. Just be that little bit better. Just be that little bit better. Have the courage to go, okay, who's on the promotion list? Okay, there's no women. We need to fix that. Who's not in the room? Okay, we need to fix that. There is no way that you can tell me with any shred of integrity or honesty that you can call up someone and say, we've lost your entire shipment. So sorry. You know, the last production run of Porsches of a certain line are at the bottom of the ocean because the road, right? And then, but you can't tell Kevin from accounting to stop making inappropriate jokes. Like, that's the hard part of your day. You can go, and someone literally said to my face, oh, Alison, I think we just need to be a bit gentler. I think we need to be a bit nicer. And I said, if they can take on the government, if they can take on the unions, then sorry, I'm not the scariest part of their day. They can listen to me give this feedback when they are happy to tell me to my face all this sort of stuff. Sorry, absolutely not. You are either competent, capable, assertive, passionate, whip smart, and you can have robust conversations. If you can do that with the government, you can do that with your shareholders, you can do that with your customers, you can do that with regulators, you can do that with the union, then you can do it to your own team when you're at an event night and someone says, oh, you know, like some horrendously sexist comment, and they can turn around and should be able to say, apply the same skill set and go, inappropriate, stop that. Apologize now.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
It takes courage for them, you know?
No, what frustrates me is that they say that everyone should speak up, and then people like me speak up, and then they all abandon me and say, well, you should have courage. And I said, why should I have more courage as a victim than you have as courage as a bystander or as a leader? Especially when as a bystander or a leader, especially as a leader in response, you have time, you have resources to come out and say a very basic condemnation. That is pure cowardice. And that is the opposite of merit. And I'll say that again for your listeners. To not support someone who has spoken up, or to not call out behavior, or to not do a basic condemnation of clear black and white bad behavior, that is cowardice, and that is the opposite of merit.
Thank you for pointing that out.
It comes down to basic logic. And I'm not going to have merit shoved down my throat as the reason why I can't get ahead and then turn around and move the goalposts. I'm going to call out that hypocrisy every day of the week. Because the fun fact is, I am a lawyer and I deal in the weirdest, nichest, most interestingly convoluted, conflicting legal space there is, international shipping. I will reduce things to basic logic and I will win. And I'm not going to leave this industry just because a bunch of cowards are too scared to be any good at their job.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. I'm happy that you were able to put it so elegantly, but still straightforward.
I've had a lot of practice. It's the 10,000 hours principle. When you put a lawyer with passion for gender equity, and I've advocated for over 10,000 hours, I can kind of get the sound bites down to a nice pat. But I love the industry, and why should I leave?
I love the industry as well. Why should I leave? Also, one of the reasons when I started my podcast was to have equally many female voices as male voices. And I didn't actually believe it myself when I started. Because all I saw was men being featured in industry magazines or on TV or whatever. But I thought, I have to try. I have to be that change. If I want that change, I have to be that change as well. It took me 5 years to reach equilibrium, but I have. And now I don't even think about if it's a man or a woman who is the guest on the show. It's someone who has got something to say and someone who is very good for young people to listen to or politicians to listen to. And it's out there, it's in cyberspace. And that is, I think, the advantage of being in the podcasting industry is that you don't know who is listening and you don't know who is really listening.
Well, I am definitely available to intimidate your senior male staff. I'm also available I do actually want to start, it's something I've been mulling on, but a service I would love to offer is a closed door workshop with men, and it's a Ask Me Anything. And it's for senior leaders who know the right things they should be doing, but don't truly understand why. And they're too senior and they're caught up in this web of it's too late to ask. And I would love to be that. I will explain it to you. I will map out the whole background so you truly understand in a really, really safe space that you can ask the quote unquote dumb questions. And some men want to learn and some men want to remain ignorant. So I'm available to hire to intimidate the ignorant and the willfully ignorant, and I'm available to hire to educate the willingly curious, because I think that you can't just come with a problem, you have to come with a solution.
I support that. Go for it. They need it and you need it and the industry need it. I have been participating in a podcasting school like that, called the E-League. I think you should call this the C-League.
Oh, I love that. That is amazing. Yes. I love this. I love when you get people who love what they do, and then you just all these great ideas come out and bounce out and bounce around. But yeah, if you're genuinely curious, there's always going to be people who want to help you. And that's not just in gender, that is shipping in general, right? We are so used to having to educate everyone. It is a skill set that we have. I mean, we have so many acronyms, we have so many double ups of acronyms. If you are genuinely curious and come with a good heart and good intention, you will never be short of a teacher. But if you're going to be willfully ignorant about gender, if you're going to be willfully ignorant about safety, I don't play when it comes to safety. I will come in and I will terrify the crap out of you for daring to be so casual as to put my seafarers in danger. And they're not even my seafarers, but they're our seafarers. We should think of them as all of our seafarers, because we all rely on them not only for our jobs, but also our day-to-day life. So that's the two camps I put people in.
And I'm still amazed that none of the big ship owners has tried to take the place of being the most equal one and to actually show it, because they would have all the women in the industry to cheer them on and to help them and to bring their message on to the rest of the world. It's the same with, if we start, the elevator pitch that you were talking about the maritime industry, the entire maritime industry just want to bring that on to the rest of the world, because we love our industry so much.
Honestly, if you don't love the industry, you should probably leave, because it's not an industry for the faint-hearted, and I adore it. Like I have so many conversations about the industry to pick. I always joke that if someone kidnapped me, they'd return me, because I just go on like a whole life and history of the maritime industry and be like, and another thing, and another thing, and another thing. And please don't kidnap me. It'd be a great story, but not fun to experience. But this is what I don't understand. Why is the shipping industry so keen to be the best at, liftings in a port, at having the most tonnage, at having whatever? But then gender's like, maybe if we all just don't talk about it, they'll stop whining. But you're right. Anytime someone does anything decently good, the entire industry just lifts them up. And it's like, number one, they can do no wrong. We love them forever. I will not hear a bad word against them. They're like, oh, but they did this. And like, yes, but they did this other really, really good thing. When they talk about green fuels, people are like, oh, but is that just greenwashing? And I was like, I will make no comment because I don't want to get in trouble. But if someone was doing great, and this is the thing, right? the Royal Australian Navy has something like 23 or 24% women participation in their Navy. That is huge, and they're still pushing for more. And I always talk about them because I say, if the government can do gender equity better than the commercial sector, that has to be so embarrassing for you, because everyone always says that, you know, commercial can do things better than government. It's like the Navy is besting you. As of Saturday, the 1st of June, Australia has 3 warships. 2 of them will be captained by women.
Good on you.
So 67% of the warships in Australia will be captained by women. I mean, how are you going to be embarrassed by the Royal Australian Navy like that, commercial sector? Like, you're getting it handed to you by Australian Navy is besting, I think, a bunch of other navies as well, which is kind of funny as an Australian. But, I mean, the commercial sector, you're back down to 1.2%. I mean, that's embarrassing for you. Lift your game. You're getting outdone by the navies. Lift your game. Be better. It's just woefully embarrassing. Get it together. Have a website. You know what we should do? We should rank them on a website. You know, they rank for everything else. We should rank them on a website.
For a long time, I have been thinking about ranking the companies in the industry on a website for people to vote. I would like to work here. And then everyone would know and everyone would see, oh, this is where women want to work.
Can I tell you the funniest thing? You know how they have all these like workplace awards for like gender or whatever, but it's done on policies. It's not done on actual like realities. And then these companies win it. And can I tell you, my LinkedIn DMs and my Instagram DMs and all that would get flooded with rants from women who worked at those companies going, that is such a slap in the face. Like, they are terrible for women to work at, and they're winning these BS awards because their policies are technically okay. Someone in Australia won a gender equity award for their policies, and they didn't have a single woman working for them. And everyone's like, come on. People who give out awards, stop doing this. It's just ruining your own brand. But I would love a website, but where you could just like anonymously vote, because I doubt it would attract the ire of like the bots because no one knows about shipping. But can I tell you, that would be, I would love to be a part of that and be like the wall of shame and just start from like worst to best.
It could be the other way around as well. I think there was a female network in the UK 10, 15 years ago when they all started talking about equality and gender equality and so on. Who actually started this? Where do you want to work? Who's the best at this? And it's so good because then you see the good and the bad.
Because, you know, I did have this really great chat with a lady, and if you're listening, please DM me, because I met so many people at the Worcester conference in Geneva, but we were talking about the forgotten about area for women progression is internal promotions. And that is like the black hole of progression is internal promotions. They don't internally promote. But before I left Worcester, Australia, one of the projects I really wanted to get going and just ran out of time was ranking all the companies by their maternity leave. And like, I don't have kids, but it's the biggest barrier, right, to continuing coming back into the workforce. And I just never understood, if you treat anyone properly at a time of need, and I'm pretty sure we can agree pregnancy is like a time of need, and you treat them well, they will be loyal for life. And I wanted to rank all the companies based on how much time they had as maternity leave. And everyone's like, oh, you can't do that. And I was like, why not? I think it'd be, data is power. We finally had in Australia, they finally had to start reporting. If you have over 100 employees, you had to report on gender and you had to report on a bunch of policies. And then they published publicly with the company names attached all of their data. And this was just this year, and it's been magnificent. And can I tell you, the conversation has been supercharged because now we don't feel gaslit. They're like, oh, that's not really how it is. We have hard data to be like, we need to start the hard data science of all the shipping companies and break it down region by region, because just if you're a good carrier in a Scandinavian company doesn't mean like you're treating them well in Australia or like India or wherever. Shout out to the data scientists who, any, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this later, any grad student who's looking for a project in data science, have we got a project for you? Not sure how we'll fund it, the carriers have cash. But it'd be really cool.
I've got so many projects I would want to launch. So yeah, just let us know. We can see what we can do. We know people all over the world, don't we, Ali?
Well, it is very funny because I forget how weird it is, all the people that I know. But when that top 100 in shipping came out, I finally cracked it. I was so excited. It was literally a goal. I was like, yes, number 58. And then I was like, wait, not only do I know a bunch of these names, I literally am friends with them. And I talk to them and I see them in conferences. And I was like, oh, wait, these are some pretty powerful ladies. And I'm just happy to be there. But this is the thing. Our industry, I think we just forget that our industry is based upon the person who's willing to push it to the next level and the next direction, whatever that is. And that's very normal because you're like, oh, okay, we'll just be trailblazers. Trailblaze on data, trailblaze on equality, trailblaze on equity. Okay, I will publicly endorse whichever containerized carrier hits 20% women seafarers.
Me too.
Done. That's the target. 20% women seafarers. And I don't want to hear all your crap about your weird staffing management, silo companies and they can't, whatever. If your name is on the side of the ship, I want to see 20% women seafarers. And I think we need to have a special global industry prize for the first commercial vessel that has an all-female crew. The airlines are doing it. You can't get outdone by the airline industry. Come on. That's embarrassing. We were there first. Shipping was there first. Why are we last? I'm not okay with this. Do better. You're embarrassing us.
How do you see the future for the maritime industry? How do you see shipping moving forward?
That's a really great question because at the moment we seem to be chasing our tails a lot. We are bogged down in the minutiae. We are bogged down in, there's a spike in spot rates. And I'm like, get contracts. And they go, we don't want contracts. And I was like, well, then suffer the spike rates and the peak season surcharges and the GRIs. And I think we're actually going to see an erosion of the middle sector of every service provider. I think we're going to see an erosion because every time there's a recession or a global recession, it is an opportunity for the big guys to buy out. You know what I mean? They're their next anticipated competitors. So I think we're going to see, maybe not at the carrier level. I mean, we've gone through that with, some of the Hanjin and that. We've seen that. I think Zim's going to pull through based on their last sort of reports. But maybe not the carrier level, but I think at that freight forwarder, exporter, I think there's going to be a real homogenization of, we've seen it with Amazon, all the small kind of up and coming, maybe about to get that national level, that international profile or that next thing. I think they're all going to be targeted and swallowed up by the bigger guys. And I think we're going to have people like me, the sort of one person show who's just got endless enthusiasm to just keep trying and refuse to quit. And then you'll see the huge, the mergers and the carriers will buy the forwarders and the forwarders will buy the trucking businesses and the distribution centers. And I think, this sort of 5PL will collapse into 4PL will collapse into, and then suddenly they do everything and you've got this vertical integration. So I think that mid-tier of service providers and consume, on all parts of the spectrum, I think they are going to disappear. And I think the industry will be poorer for it. I do think the industry will be poorer for it. So to all those entrepreneurs doing the good things, those business owners doing the good, hold on, ask for help. Don't let your pride come before the fall of your business. Reach out for help.
I think we can already see the signs of this. Ship owners are buying up truck companies and logistics companies and so on. But there is a pendulum. It will turn back. So just hang in there.
Yeah, just hang in there, weather the storm. And honestly, I think people underestimate how many supporters they have. There's just a lot of, I know as being a business owner, there are so many silent supporters, but put your hand up. Put your hand up. Anyone wants to give me more work, I'd be grateful for it. I'll review your contracts. It's great. I love going against the carriers. Shout out to the carriers for doing enough wrong things that give me enough work. The FMC is coming for all of you. But yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that we are going to see another wave of loss of knowledge and talent. So when I saw that, I was coming off the tail end of that when I started in 2012 in the shipping industry. we were losing a lot of that old school knowledge, who had been around, who had learnt, their trade by doing, and it wasn't properly passed on to the next generation. And I had people going, "What's a T-floor?" And I was like, I am truly disturbed that you don't know what a T-floor in a reefer is. If you're packing a reefer or you're moving a reefer, it's for the air circulation. And so I think we might see another, if we're having all of this consolidation, they will fire. It's who I call the Jimmies, because there was a guy called Jimmy and I was part of a merger, and there was a guy called Jimmy who did the job of 4 people, right? He was the go-to man. He was the fix-it. He stopped everything before it got out of control. Anyway, he got let go. And then one of the managers was like, "Alison, why am I getting this huge influx of these specific type of queries?" I was like, "It's because you let go of Jimmy, man. If you'd bothered to ask me, because I sit on the sidelines and I see everything, if you'd bothered to ask me, I could have told you who the strategic people were, but you wanted to let go of Jimmy, and now you're reaping the rewards / the consequences." So I think a lot of those, and we've seen them in businesses, right? They are hardworking, keep a low profile. Those in the know, they're the fix-it people. Protect those people, because you're not paying them enough. They're doing it out of the love and the joy and the loyalty and whatever. And I don't know where that came from, but just protect them, because we're going to lose all of those people with this. It's so intangible, right? It's knowing these things you can only get from experience. And for instance, I have a huge wealth of cultural knowledge because I looked after all the port agents for a global carrier. And you get to know how you need to address an issue with South Korea versus Singapore versus Sweden versus, the UK. You learn these intangibles of, okay, this is how you approach it. This is how you make sure you get them into the conversation and doing what you want, as opposed to annoying them and then it's all gone wrong. So there's just all these. I think that's the other huge thing that's going to happen. We've gone through the tech bubble for now, thank God. But I think we're going to get another brain drain. We really can't afford.
No, we can't.
So invest in training and retention of your staff, please.
Who would you be interested in listening to on the shipping podcast? Who do you think I should interview the next?
Oh, that's really interesting, because you've interviewed Sal, and Sal's my go-to. Sal and I always compete for who's been first on a podcast. I think, I've heard from him, but I think you should interview him because he's very, very straightforward and he's behind the scenes of everything. I think you should check out Brian Glick from Chain.io. He's tech, but he got his start in the customs world. So that man knows his way around a HS code and the minimus and all those good things. And that's been a huge topic in the US and Mexico and all the shenanigans across the border. He, I think, would be great because what he does is he calls himself Plumber Brian, because he will connect up different systems. And as we're talking more and more about the visibility of the data and the speed of data and single window and all those kind of things, he is seeing what's really going on and what everyone's doing and the transference of data, and he's behind the scenes literally connecting things. And I think he would be great for the shipping world to hear from, because he's very pragmatic. He's still weirdly optimistic, which he probably might disagree with. But I think he would be great because I think the people on the sidelines really get overlooked. People who see from start to finish and see the whole process, they have a different perspective of what's happening that you can't necessarily have if you're a player in the game. So I think he'd be really interesting to talk about the practicalities of what everyone's trying to achieve and maybe bring a different viewpoint of a whole reckoning of what's possible.
Okay, I will try and reach out to him and see what we can do. So thank you. Thank you very much, Ali, for staying up late in Australia and for me getting up early.
No, thank you for getting up early. This is actually quite a decent time, but I do love the time differences. It's always like, okay, it's, talking to 2 different people in 2 different countries. I give up.
Well, you've been on my target list for a long time, but I been too many things to do and I didn't find the time, but finally we got this conversation and we got it on tape.
I'm so excited. No, I am very excited and thank you for having me. And I didn't quite clinch the, first Australian on here, but I think I'm the third. So, top 3 is still good. I'll take top 3.
Good. Very good. Thank you. And best of luck with everything. And go for the Sea League. I think that's a good idea.
I you know what? I've been waiting on having a cool name, and I think you've come up with it. And I think Sea League is hilarious because it's like it's probably already taken, but I'll just spin it. It's fine. Thank you so much for having me.
Every conversation matters.
Thank you, Alison. Your expertise has been invaluable to me and my listeners. Best of luck with the Sea League. And please know that I'm here to support you in any way I can. If you haven't sparked interest in general average by now, I don't know what will. You're a true spokesperson for the maritime industry, and I'm so happy we had this conversation, as every conversation matters. Please give a shout out to Ali and to me. You can send me an email to hello@shippingpodcast.com, and I will read it when I come back from my holiday. Until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.